Dave Burkett here, Detroit Free Press, live from Radio Row, Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Pleasure to be joined today by Kirk Morrison. You know him probably from his NFL career best, but he's also all over the media landscape. ESPN College Football, Sirius XM NFL. Kirk, thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
No problem, Dave, man. Anytime.
One of the things I'm doing here down on Radio Row is trying to get a good read on the Lions' new coordinators, right? They hired John Morton as their offensive coordinator and Kelvin Sheppard as their defensive coordinator. And I wanted to have you on because you played with Kelvin. You were in Buffalo for, I think, his first 2 seasons in the league. So let's start there. What do you remember best about Kelvin from your time together?
Well, Dave, I would tell you this. That's how I know I'm getting old. Because Kelvin Shepard was my rookie. Man, he was my rookie in 2011 when we were together in Buffalo. But, right away, you could just see the gifts and the talents that Kelvin Shepard had, the mind that he had, the physicality in which he played with. And I was brought in to be a complimentary linebacker. I'm going into my, at that time, 7th year in the league. And I was coming in to play sort of a package and then be a backup to the young upstart linebacker that the Buffalo Bills drafted in the 3rd round. But you could see right away Kelvin's talent. You could see right away that he was going to be a really good linebacker in this league for a very, very long time.
You mentioned you were one of the vets on that linebacker. I looked up, Nick Barnett was there, Byron Scott. So I think there are a lot of vets. How did beyond the talents, right? How did his leadership show up those first couple of years when he was in Buffalo, when he was a young guy?
I think his leadership was one that stood out in front of everybody. I mean, this was a rookie who comes in and was being thrust in front of the defense. Now, Nick Barnett was a guy who had, the most experience out of everybody in the group, but I always felt that we were sort of grooming Kelvin Shepard to be the great linebacker for the Buffalo Bills. And his leadership, it speaks not only in his play, in his voice, but the way that he competes. We would compete in the weight room, in our sprints, in the classroom, but the classroom part of it is what I really thought stood tall, was us in the meeting rooms having difficult conversations about how should we play certain, schemes? How should we play, different calls that we got? And Kelvin was one of those guys who, as a young player, he wanted the answers. And we had them, it was funny because I was, like I said, I'm later in my years of my career. Barnett, same thing. We also had another longtime linebacker in Andre Davis who played for a very long time. And one thing that was great is that we all came from different schemes. We played around the league under different schemes. Kelvin was just drafted there, but you had players who weren't drafted from Buffalo, and we all came together. And so we all had different ways of thinking. We all had different ways of talking in terminology, and Kelvin was like a sponge, and he soaked all of that up.
When you say some of those things, it makes me think of maybe a future coach, right? A person who wants that knowledge, who understands all the different concepts you're trying to put in defensively. How rare is that, of all the stops that you've been in, for a young guy to be like that? Some young guys may be a little more sheepish. They're not quite ready to absorb it all. How rare was that for a young guy to be sort of that advanced when it came to some of the non-football playing things?
I would say it will be rare depending on where the guy played his college football at. But Kelvin played in the SEC.
Yeah.
He was the middle linebacker for LSU. And then also he played at Death Valley on a Saturday night, which we know is one of the hardest places to play if you're a visiting team. But at LSU, that place is loud. That place is rocking. So communication was always key. He came in communicating because that's what he had to do in college at a very, very high level. And so you could see the way that his demeanor, the way that he would get down to the defensive line and, hey, move, slide, tight right, tight left. He had the communication down. But more importantly, I just thought that, he had a mindset that he was unafraid to go and be a leader, where some guys would kind of take the slow approach. he went out and he showed his leadership skills. And I think we were in a room of linebackers that we all really spoke the game together. Our defensive linebacking coach was Dave Wanstead. So you can only imagine what, one of the great coaches and Super Bowl winning coaches in Wanstead, and also in college at Pitt. We had just great conversations in that room. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to go into coaching, but I kind of like being an analyst, and I feel like I'm a coach in what I do with college football and the NFL. But Nick Barnett, he is a high school coach, head coach over in San Diego. We're talking Kelvin Sheppard, who's now a defensive coordinator. Like, our whole room is now coaches. Wow. It's kind of crazy that we all fed off of each other. And so there's no surprise why I think Kelvin Shepard is getting this honor, but more importantly, he's earned it too. It's not like he's been given this. He's earned this job as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. He's been on the fast track since he started here in Detroit. I think the people within the organization have said that for a long, long time. And us here on the media side, the people in the community, I think, have seen that as well. You mentioned Dave Wanstead. George Edwards, I think, was the DC, maybe your first year there. Dave, the second. We're all a product of our past. I don't know that the Lions defense is going to change a whole lot, but can you describe maybe just philosophically, like those defenses that you guys played in Buffalo, just, to give an idea of maybe how some concepts that we might see from the Lions defense going forward?
Well, I think what you will see is multiplicity, right? You will be multiple. I know when we're together in Buffalo, we would be with a 5-man front. We can go to a 4-man front. We can go to an odd look. We can go 3-4. We can go 3-3-5. It didn't matter. We were using different looks. And, obviously Kelvin's background as a linebacker, and also Sean Dion Hamilton, congratulations to him as well. Another outstanding young linebacker who gets opportunity as the linebackers coach. I love that Kelvin is going to bring so much that he's learned along the way. Through his just time in the NFL, he's been through multiple schemes. That's why he was able to play so long and be a linebacker that you can trust. And that's what I think the biggest thing that he brings is that he's going to put you in situations where you can be at your best, and he's going to push you. Like, that's the one thing I would say is that Kelvin is unafraid to push you, to get underneath that skin of yours and make you be at your best. He demands it each and every day. And for people who only got that small glimpse of him, Dave, during the Hard Knock series, that's Kelvin Shepard every day. So I think we should get a tip jar together and put it out there for training camp. And for every day that Kelvin Shepard loses his voice, let's just drop $1 in there. And I'll tell you, we have a nice little set of change for the end of training camp that we can go take each other to lunch.
We'll go for a nice little dinner based on that for sure. I think you're right too. Linebackers, because of all that you do on the field, you're kind of the nerve center of the defense in a lot of ways. They can make pretty good coaches, and we've seen it in the past. And I think that's, the thought with Kelvin in a lot of ways. You mentioned, give me your favorite anecdote of Shep. Just that, is there some moment from a meeting, and maybe you're bowling, maybe it's off the field, just your favorite moment that you had with him when you guys were playing together in Buffalo?
Oh man, so many good ones. But me and Shep, we always exchange, texts, and when I see him, we have, long conversations. I remember the last time we always see each other at the combine for sure. And but I remember I had a game, I had a USF game on a Saturday, and the Lions had the Buccaneers the next day. So we're staying in the same hotel, had no idea. And I see, Coach Campbell and Mark Brunell and Randall L. and, all the coaches. And I'm like, man, I've played with half these guys. It's like an all-star squad that you guys have as the coaching staff and Coach Glenn. But whenever we exchange texts, I go back to when we were together, and one of our linebacker coaches that we did talk about would always talk about, we would always just text each other. We always say, I've seen you do it. That's something that we always and it was so funny because when you're a player, you always laugh at these coaches' cliches. But that was one that always stuck to me. And it's kind of funny. I use it on my kids today, with my children. Whereas that I've seen you do something, so I know what you're capable of. And it was kind of been a metaphor for life for me and him. That hey, I've seen you do it. I've seen you coach in, big moments. I've seen your players go out and make plays in the big moments. I've seen you shuffle your feet. I've seen all of this thing. So once you see it once, you can't tell me you can't do it again. And that's something that we text and joke about. We've had, like I said, great times together playing against the Patriots, right, in their dynasty. That's the one thing I would say is you learn a lot about guys when you have just certain moments, right? Like, playing against Chris Johnson and how do we CJ2K and how do we bottle him up? Like, those are the memories that I have of going in those big games and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do in order to make sure our defense is holding up our end of the bargain.
I love that. I've seen you do it as a youth basketball coach for my daughter, now my son. It's definitely one that I'm going to steal because it's positive reinforcement, right? I've seen you do it, and probably with Shep, you've seen him coach, even though he wasn't a coach back in the day. Couple of last minutes here with Kirk Morrison, host ESPN College Football Series XM NFL. Kirk, when did you know that Kelvin wanted to get into coaching or would make a good coach for that matter?
Now, I believe Kelvin overlapped with Coach Campbell when they were in Miami.
Yep.
And when they did, you can kind of see, like, coaches, you just know there's a feeling. Kelvin reminds me a lot of Dan Campbell, who I competed with, in this league when he was at tight end and I'm playing linebacker. But, like, there's just guys, I think, that who you play with and you just know. When someone says, oh, he's a coach, you're like, oh, yeah, that's that person. Kelvin Sheppard always had that coaching bug just because of his demeanor, his leadership, and just his knowledge of the football game. So when I saw him first getting into it, you kind of knew that he was on the fast track. And success breeds that. And the confidence that he's had in his guys, watching, I think Malcolm Rodriguez is really kind of the prototype for what Shepherd's been able to do. Like, get a guy who's, not a highly drafted guy, undrafted, I think maybe. And I mean,
sixth round,
yeah, playing at such a high level and getting those opportunities. And that's the one thing that I would say that he brings, to answer your question, like, when do you know? I don't even know it's when you know. I just know that his motivation, tactics when he was a player have now come over to him being a coach, but he's fair. And he always understands that he is going to play the best player. It's not about if you're a first-round pick, a second-round pick, third round. I did have jokingly, I said, man, what did you do for them to allow you to get a Jack Campbell? And he start laughing. I say that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to get first-round linebackers.
Yeah, right.
But to think that he was able to not only get Jack up to speed and have him playing some good football before he got banged up, and to have Malcolm and then have Alex, who missed some time and come back. I sit back and I watch, his linebackers because of that. And I'll shoot him a text and just say, look, man, your guys are playing well. They came downhill. They're doing their part. So those are the types of things where I reinforce what he's doing. And I just knew that his time was going to come where he would get this opportunity. And I'm excited for him. I really am. He's a guy that everybody knows Shep, right? You're going to know Shep. I think now the NFL world will really get a chance to see this Detroit Lions defensive coordinator who may be, I think, hopefully on that fast track to being a National Football League head coach.
Steve Spagnuolo said that to me the other day. I asked him during Super Bowl Media Day, he was talking about some of his missing out on jobs and whether he still wants to be a head coach. And I said, one of your old guys, Kelvin Shepard, and he grabbed me by the arm. He said, that guy's going to be a head coach. I love Shepard.
Oh, yeah.
People see it. People see it. All right, you've got another, and to your point about, some of those guys that played under him, I mean, people in Detroit know this. Alex Anzalone, best football of his career under Shep. Malcolm Rodriguez, 6th-round pick, playing his best. They let him start, right off the gate.
Right.
We've seen it with Jack Campbell, the growth. So I think that's a big reason why the Lions felt comfortable in promoting him. Another guy well, let's throw this out there for Jets fans, Tanner Engstrand, former Lions passing game coordinator, now going to be offensive coordinator in New York. I know you're happy for him. What do you think his offense will look like in New York?
I'm very happy for Tanner, man. I mean, this is one of my college teammates. Think about this quarterback room that we had at San Diego State, Dave. We had the starter was Kevin O'Connell, who we know is the head coach over at Minnesota. His backup was a guy by the name of Darren Muji, who is now the general manager of the New York Jets. And then the third string guy was a guy by the name of Tanner Engstrand, who is now the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. So just think about how lucky that I've been, like I said, in my football career to be around guys like Kelvin and Coach Wanstead and all those. I can name so many guys on the defensive side, but the young offensive players and coaches now that have risen from my college days, it's fun to be able to have these guys on, in my phone book. Some people always ask, who's the most famous person in your Rolodex or in your contacts? I said, I don't know if I would call them famous, because these guys are in high level decision-making positions in the NFL. And Tanner Engstrand is one of those guys. I've watched him grow since after, he got done with college, wanted to get into coaching, and it's just been a young offensive mind who's just been grinding away. And it's no surprise that this was his time. This was his moment. He's been around the league for a little bit. And I think it was to a point where people were like, okay, here he is. And Tanner, man, congratulations to him. I wanted him to stay in Detroit because I know how much he put into that offensive package. And I talked to, Jared Goff at the Pro Bowl last week. And so, he's excited for Tanner, but he's also excited, for Ben Johnson as well to get those opportunities. And when you have success the way the Lions did, everybody sort of gets rewarded. So happy for, Ben, the offensive coordinator, but Tanner's my guy, and I hope he does great things with the New York Jets. And so does Aaron Glenn as well, too. I think it's good that they're not in the same conference as well, so you can actually root for them.
Those are the fruits of winning for the people that are part of it. And the flip side of that is the Lions. I mean, they've lost 8 assistant coaches already this offseason, including both coordinators. That is a lot of turnover. In your eyes, and having gone through this, I'm sure some in the NFL, what is the challenge when a team has to replace that many coaches and high-level coaches to come back the next season and sustain what they did on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, another one of my duties, Dave, is I work with the Rams as their pregame, halftime, and postgame coverage of every Rams game, Los Angeles Rams game. So I've seen the 9 years since they've come back to Los Angeles. Started with them in 2016. And Sean McVay took over as head coach in 2017. So you talk about
this is the first year they haven't lost assistants, right? Basically, since then.
No, he's lost assistants, right? Cayley, who's the
Nick Cayley,
he goes over and he took the job with the Buccaneers, right? I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So it happens every single year for Sean McVay, and I will just go off what I ask him. Because I told him, there's the Masters golf tournament is a tradition unlike any other. And I said, there's always a tradition like any other that Sean McVay is going to replace some assistants every single year. He laughs, but the one thing that he says is that you have
You're good. They're good.
Is that you have a culture that's set, and you have a culture that is always uplifting and getting coaches ready. And think about it. If a coach knows that there's going to be an opportunity available to him, do you think he's going to slack off or give half effort? No. He's going to give everything that he can to hold up his end of the bargain. But more importantly, coach as if he's trying to get the next job, not in a way that takes away from that, but within the structure and the culture of the team. So I really love that part of it, that I get that from Sean McVay. And I think that's what Dan Campbell is doing, bringing guys in. Yes, you're going to lose some coaches, but the next set of coaches that are coming in understand the culture. They understand the standard. And now you have a sprinkling of coaches who are still there who will make sure that's upheld, and that's just a cycle. When you have success, this is what happens.
And maybe from the Lions standpoint, Shep has been here for 4 years. John Morton was here a couple of years ago, so they're familiar with that, and there will be some scheme familiarity, I'm sure, that helps the players too. It can't be easy, though, on players when, the Eagles, they have a shot to be the first team ever to win a Super Bowl with 2 new coordinators this year. So there are some hurdles they have to clear early in the season, at least. Lions, that is, for next year. Yeah.
No, you're 100% accurate. That's always the difficulty when you do have a new voice or new terminology, a new philosophy. They trying to get it done, and then you look at the opposite side, where you just mentioned Coach Spagnuolo and Matt Nagy, and a lot of the coaching staff. that has been with the Kansas City Chiefs, they haven't had that same turnover. And so there's a consistency and a level of confidence that those guys play with. And I don't think you could be surprised, Dave, about why they are going for their third consecutive Super Bowl.
No.
The message doesn't change. The culture hasn't changed. I think the only thing is just the mentality. Now, they went from being America's darlings to villains. And I think Detroit is still on the darling stage. I don't want to call them villains over there, but they're a successful franchise who have a lot in front of them. Just an unsuccessful season, and the injuries caught up to the Detroit Lions this year. There's no doubt about it. They didn't play their best football when they needed to, and that was after the bye. But that doesn't take away anything, for this franchise. I love where they're heading to, and 15-2 should definitely be that's unheard of. And next year, I believe you look at the season a little bit differently. I think when I look at the Chiefs, and hopefully I'm not going off on a tangent here, Dave, but
No.
I feel like teams are like, we just want to get to the tournament. I think the Lions put so much into being the best team in the NFC and home field advantage and all those things. And then at the end of the day, it's like, we just need to be healthy. Whether it's we win 10 games, 12 games, 14. If we get to the tournament, we get to the playoffs, everybody's record is 0-0. And if we're at our healthiest, I don't think anybody would have beat that Lions team in the NFC. I think we'd be talking a little bit differently down here in New Orleans about this team being in the Super Bowl because they were healthy and they weren't going after this best record. So I honestly believe that you will look at this team a little bit different, or I'm saying Dan Campbell will assess this team and the season a little bit differently. Like, how much do we put our guys in these strenuous situations? Do we need to add more depth throughout the training camp? Do we need to have more depth throughout the season? Because we want to get to the finish line as healthy as possible, and that was just not the case, and you see what happened.
I think there's a lot of Lions fans that agree with you that if they're healthy, they're here in New Orleans, and maybe my week looks a whole lot different. Let's end it on this. Kirk Morrison, Super Bowl 59 is Sunday. Chiefs, Eagles. Who do you like and why?
To me, it's just so hard not to go with the Chiefs. This is the back-to-back champions. I don't see them losing the game. I see that Patrick Mahomes will be Patrick Mahomes. They'll have a wrinkle or two or three for the Philadelphia Eagles, and how quickly can Vic Fangio and that defense be able to adjust to get in Kellen Moore? What will he have in store, for this Spagnuolo defense? I know that their job is to stop Saquon Barkley. That's going to put the onus on Jalen Hurts. So the guy, and another term that we used to always use, me and Kelvin Sheppard and guys, the guy with the big sombrero. So if you ask Kelvin about that, we always say the guy who wears the big sombrero means the guy who has the biggest job, the guy who can't hide, the guy that you have to do your job because everyone's counting on you. The big sombrero guy is Jalen Hurts, because if Saquon is not getting those explosive plays, can he convert on third down, keeps the chains moving, and get some of those plays with his arm and his legs? So the big onus is going to be on the play of Jalen Hurts, I believe. And if Spagnuolo and his defense can keep him, in between the tackles, not those explosive plays, I'm leaning toward the Chiefs in winning this one.
That's great stuff. I got the Chiefs, too, because I think I'd kind of like to see Mahomes get 3 straight, keep him in the mix for the GOAT when it's all said and done, his career many, many years from now. It should be a great game. Kirk Morrison, ESPN College Football, Sirius XM NFL Radio. I appreciate your time. Thanks for all the insight. Great insight on Kelvin Shepard, new Lions defensive coordinator.
Hey, you got it, Dave. Anytime, man. Anytime. Appreciate it.
Thanks again. Dave Burkett, Radio Row, Super Bowl 59 here with Detroit Free Press. Kirk Morrison, and we'll catch you later.